Today in the garage, we're recording live at ACT Expo 2026 in Las Vegas, Nevada. Around the show floor, there's an incredible diversity of commercial vehicles of all types, from heavy tractors, trailers, buses, lots of electric charging equipment, specialty purpose vehicles of all kind. And one of the things that we recognize is the importance of how technology can benefit fleets and benefit their different missions. Whether it's for preventative maintenance, ensuring uptime and reliability and safety, all the way through to autonomous trucking and optimized operations. Technology has a role to play in commercial vehicles, and we're beginning to see that. So many of the exhibits here are looking at how fleets are using technology in new ways to solve a diverse range of problems. To dig into that topic, we have a special guest with us today. Our guest is Lawrence Bader, who spent 32 years at UPS running and managing their fleet operations and now is an independent consultant. And Lawrence is going to share with us in today's interview a wide range of problems that he encountered and fleets have to solve, and how he's seeing technology solving a range of those issues now and in the future. It's a very interesting conversation on commercial vehicles. Let's go. Welcome to the garage. I'm John Heinlein, Chief Marketing Officer with Sonatus. We're here recording live at ACT Expo in Las Vegas 2026. I'm so excited to welcome Lawrence Bader to the podcast. Lawrence, welcome to the garage.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it.
We always have our guests begin by telling us about themselves and their background. Please introduce yourself. Tell us about you.
Sure. Well, my name is Lawrence Bader. I recently retired from UPS after 32 years.
32 years, that's great.
32 years is a long time, where I had the opportunity to run what we call global fleet systems. And I spent my entire career in really the IT discipline, if you will. But working for UPS gave me lots of opportunities to work in the airline space, to work in the automated hubs. And in the last decade of my career, I actually focused on what we call ground transportation. And that was basically the fleet of about 275,000 pieces of rolling equipment.
That's a lot of equipment. That kind of insight is exactly what we're looking for. We're looking to learn about you and what you learned from that time. But begin first by telling us a fun fact about you, as we always do on the podcast.
Well, actually, John, I really enjoy building and racing cars. I didn't start that really until later in life. As a matter of fact, I couldn't even change a set of brakes until I was 45 years old. But, I was in an IT background for such a long time that when you build software, you don't get your really hands on it. You don't feel it and get to really overly experience it. So, I learned to turn a wrench and be able to put that power to the ground, so to speak, and really just enjoy racing cars.
That's fantastic. I love that discipline. I must say it's not an expertise I have, but I like building physical things. I do a little carpentry. I like to build stuff at home. So yeah. I think
you see in touch what you build, right?
Yeah, you could see it tangible. I think it's great. So now tell us about what you do now in your company.
Yeah, so after 32 years of being in the industry, I didn't really want to leave the industry just yet. So I made a lot of friends and you got to get a lot of opportunities here. So really, I'm just an independent consultant where I like to help fleets adopt technologies. I had the luxury of really exercising a lot of products while I was at UPS. And if I can bring that to other fleets who don't necessarily have the background or the time to kind of press into those things, it's just a good thing for me to do. But I also like to help, vendors and solution providers who are developing products and, help them to determine really what's going to stick, what's going to sell to fleets. But really, all roads for me really lead towards autonomous vehicles. I'm trying to help accelerate the adoption of autonomous operations.
Fantastic. If someone wants to find you, what's the name of your company?
Advanced Transportation Technology.
Oh, great.
And you can just find me on LinkedIn.
Okay. Well, and we're happy to put a link in the show notes as well for people to be able to find you. So based on your long career at UPS, I'm wondering, what are the lessons you learned there that can apply to fleets today that people can learn from?
I think the biggest overarching learning that I've had throughout my entire career is you really just got to start. You really have got to really move the needle by getting going. Oftentimes we overanalyze solutions. We often overanalyze where we want to be, what you want to get accomplished. But start small, gain some confidence, and then you can build on top of those wins, if you will. So it's like iterative development is something in the IT industry we did a lot of. And if you don't start, you're never going to get there.
Can you share an example of how you see people using technology in a fresh and interesting way?
Yes, as a matter of fact, something that I recently had the opportunity to help deploy before I left UPS was something we called keyless tractor. We actually physically removed the keys from the operation of a tractor.
No keys.
No keys. Yes, we actually did an encrypted digital key on the driver's device, which allowed us to issue electronic keys at the right time to the right driver for the right vehicle. So the concept of having to manage keys or having the keyboard up there or keys in coffee cans, we eliminated. And that helped us in numerous ways. One of them was just driver time alone. The driver would, when they came to the facility, they would go through the guard shack, and then they'd have to walk into the dispatch office. They would get assigned their tractor, and sometimes the driver did not necessarily want that particular tractor that was scheduled for him. So he would maybe sweet talk the person behind the counter to give him a different tractor for the day, and just threw everything out of sorts, right? So here now the driver can not have to walk to the dispatch office. It's automatically on their device. They walk to the unit. It can immediately open the doors when they get into the range, starts the pre-chip cycle, and off they go. And like maintenance personnel, oftentimes they couldn't find the keys when they had to move the units to bring them into the shop. But now it's actually on the device for the mechanic, and they can unlock the vehicle, move it into place, and begin their work without having to go to the dispatch office.
I'm sure that allows you to provision keys and also revoke rights later when they're not needed.
Yeah, and that's actually an interesting technology that could play in a lot of different spaces, like it's with the rental market or the leasing market. But I think any fleet who has a key management problem, that's just an interesting solution that's out there, right? Just one of many.
Yeah, just using technology in a fresh way. We're finding, and I think when we talk to customers, so much times the perfect is the enemy of the good.
Absolutely.
And people are trying to arrange the perfect solution, and what they end up with is nothing.
You're never going to get there.
It's so much better to start with a solution that works, it's solid, and add to it. One of the things our solutions provide is the ability to change and iterate. You might begin using it for one application, and you realize, well, I have this other problem, but you can grow into that and you can expand.
Right. And I think we're all discovering that today, definitely with AI. Just collecting the data has been a tremendous amount of time we've all spent in getting the data in our hands, but we didn't know what to do with it, right? We couldn't put action to it. So now we can iterate on top of all the data we gathered over all those years.
It's a perfect transition because AI is such an important topic for us and an important topic we cover on the podcast now. So what are you seeing in AI as moving the needle today, and where do you see the opportunities, and where would you suggest people be investing in AI in the future? Because I think people think about AI and they immediately think about autonomous, which is important. I think they think about voice assistants and so on. But for me, that's just the beginning, the scratching the surface of what's possible. What do you see as opportunities?
Well, to me, leveraging AI and leveraging all the data that you've collected is really how can we begin to automate those mundane tasks? Let's remove the human element out of the mundane tasks that are just simply repetitive. And that's just where we need to start, right? We started back in our early days with capturing telematics data, capturing GPS location. But, that's just the start of it. And how can we take that data and get to true predictive analytics? How can we determine component failures before they occur? How can we change our maintenance programs away from, time and miles based to really condition based upon, what's going on with the actual piece of equipment?
I think that's such an important point you mentioned, because when we think about maintenance today and we think about diagnostics, it's relatively blunt instrument people are using. And it means that you're probably doing excess maintenance you don't need.
Absolutely.
And you're doing it sometimes too late. If we can use better intelligence to both understand how the vehicle has actually been used instead of just, as you say, a mileage schedule, and then look more specifically at what your indications of problems are, I think that's incredibly valuable.
Yeah, I think oftentimes, the respectable fleets, those who need to deliver on time, will tend to over-maintain their equipment. And over-maintaining equipment is expensive, right? I mean, we would, I've seen fleets out there who would actually replace tires before they need to be replaced. They would replace starters before they need to be replaced based upon just time and miles, because they had to protect their reputation.
Right.
And, if we can move towards this, actually look at the signals that are coming off, let's just the electrical system as an example. Right. You could absolutely change 3 or 4 major parts when you're trying to prevent a failure, whether it's the battery or the cabling or the starter itself. Let's actually go in and dig into the signature patterns of the electrical circuit to see, we can have AI actually predict, well, when is that starter actually going to fail? Instead of replacing it every year, let's replace it on an as-needed basis.
Right. We're showing a demonstration just a few feet away from us in the booth, showing something similar to that, how you can use RP129 protocols to better understand the actual situation of the vehicle,
Yes.
help understand, is it the starter, or is it a wiring issue? Is it some other issue? So instead of just brute force replacing things that aren't broken, which gives you higher maintenance costs, higher downtime, you replace what's broken when it needs to be fixed. Now, you mentioned tires as well. I think it's an interesting application because tires are so crucial where the rubber meets the road, literally, right? Yeah, but we have a collaboration with Michelin that we've shown recently using AI, where they're doing exactly what you said. They're looking at specifically how the vehicle is being used, how is the load varying over time, what's the weight, all those different things, factoring in and giving a better indication of how tires are actually wearing versus how they might be theoretically wearing. And that's allowing the extended use of tires for a longer time. And again, less downtime and less unnecessary maintenance. It's using AI. And we feel that by putting some of the AI like that closer to the vehicle, you have the opportunity to do the kinds of calculations that you can't do in the cloud. It's too slow, it's too far away, it requires too much data. So that's kind of one of the visions we're looking for. Do you see that as viable?
Well, absolutely. I mean, what you can compute on the edge and being able to get the processing done away from the cloud makes you much more nimble. And also, I've come across the ideas, and maybe you guys have talked about this with virtual sensors. Actually creating sensors from 2 or 3 other inputs and being able to gain deeper insight into that. I've actually seen that in a couple different locations.
It's true, and we're showing some examples of how that works in the past. We've got some collaborations with a vendor called ComPredict, for example, and others who are using virtual sensors to calculate things. Actually, there's plenty of information to calculate a sensor result instead of putting in a physical sensor. And by doing that, they can avoid cost and simplify the vehicle. But what's really exciting, and you and I were chatting about this, is imagine you realize that I wish I had a sensor after the vehicle was shipped, and I have all the data, but darn, I didn't put the sensor in. You could put a virtual sensor in after production.
That's pretty cool.
And so, and one of the things we chatted about is imagine a virtual hazard light. You realize that, well, when these combinations of situations happen, when I see this indication on this subsystem and that indication on that subsystem, it's an indication that there's going to be a problem coming soon. You could then raise a virtual hazard light that says, hey, look, you need to take this in for service, say urgently. But that could be deployed as a kind of a virtual hazard light after production.
I actually see that as we look forward down the road to autonomous trucking. When we have autonomous trucks running down our highways, which we will indeed have, there's not a driver in the seat, right? And being able to detect an issue before it occurs, being able to articulate how far can I go with that autonomous vehicle? Do I have to get off immediately at this next exit? Can I complete my mission? Or do I need to kind of plan my route to get to the next, certified repair facility that may be 125 miles away? I think that's an interesting play.
Yeah, I mean, so much of driver expertise. We respect drivers and their knowledge and their know-how. I think myself and you and certainly professional drivers can see and feel that something's not quite right.
Right, absolutely.
And they want to adjust it. But as you go towards an autonomous world where the driver's not driving, or maybe not driving all the time, you might have a situation where you really need to be monitoring that in a new way.
Yes. Yep. And you have to mount it to both the tractor and the trailer.
It's true.
The trailer is also a very important aspect, which I'm now seeing more and more fleets adopt sensor technologies on those trailers.
Yes, smart trailers is a big topic
Absolutely.
area, and there's nothing exclusive about any of these things we're covering. I think they both apply to tractors and trailers both.
Yep. And as I mentioned earlier, encouraging fleets to just get started. I mean, there's a great example there. We're just looking at TPMS, or automatic tire inflation system, on trailers. They're not everywhere right now, but the tires is one of the most important things. And I came across a fleet here recently who adopted tire pressure monitoring systems on their equipment, and they are now, as you look at the roadside inspection data from the states, they have 0 tire violations. And that's phenomenal in our industry. And that's just an example of where fleets actually picked up the ball, started simple, something that they knew about, and applied it. And now they're being able to reap benefits from that financially, but also from a brand image.
So much of what we're talking about relies on data. I think fleets have been collecting data for years, but a lot of that data, I think, has probably gone into a pile that's never looked at. What do you see as the opportunity from using data in smart ways to do some of these things we're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, that is an industry challenge. As I talk to a lot of fleets, a lot of data is being collected, but it is collected in silos, and it's too much data for any fleet to really put to action. So that's really the key piece. Now that we have AI, it can actually come in and create these actionable insights, and we have to bring those actionable insights not to some email chain that goes out to everybody, not into a vendor dashboard where it's buried only in certain vendors' platforms. It needs to meet the operation where they are. Right. Let's roll that into their fleet management system or their work dispatch for the day, or for the drivers, the driver's panel inside the vehicle.
Right.
You got to meet the operation where they are, not layer on another piece of technology, another screen, another portal that they have to log into.
Right.
That simply does not work.
Right. So it's such a smart point, because some of the data needs to go to the central fleet manager to understand perhaps collective maintenance, maybe scheduling. Yeah. Some of it wants to go to the driver. But the answer is it's both. It's not just, okay, if I just have an app for the driver, I've solved all the problems. Or if I just throw it into some it's console a mile away. It needs to be a mixture of all of those things.
Well, and that's a key piece here, which we really haven't pressed into. But as I talk to a lot of fleets, their challenge with adopting technology or AI in general is they're very siloed. It has to be across the entire organization. The chief operating officer is one who really needs to kind of get in and make sure that all of their business units are playing together, collaborating on bringing this technology into play. It's got to be the maintenance department, the dispatch department, health and safety, and yes, the IT organization, because the IT organization, one that stitches it all together and makes it available.
Obviously, commercial fleets and commercial vehicles are different than passenger vehicles, because downtime is critical. Downtime is just money lost, directly money lost. So how do you see maintenance changing that? Do you see the ability for us to do smarter maintenance, smarter predictive maintenance, materially improving downtime?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. I mean, today we have to wait until it's an after the fact. The failure's already occurred. It already throws the diagnostic trouble code, the DTC. We need to be in front of that. And we can actually pick up data from various sensors in the normal course of the operation, have a digital twin of that particular platform, and know when it has a deviation from that. So I can predict before the actual DTC code is ever thrown. That's where the magic happens. That's where I can actually get in, pull the equipment off the road before it's a breakdown on road. I can't stand breakdown on roads.
Right. And now that's looking at an individual vehicle. I think the opportunity, and you mentioned AI as well, is if we're able to look at across a fleet. Now we're seeing patterns across a fleet that says, well, okay, I have this problem on this vehicle, but now I realize that it's affecting other vehicles, or other vehicles are going to have that problem soon.
Well, if they're using the same components, right? Or the same, the same tier one supplier has an issue across the different fleets. But even pressing into a specific make and model, we have issues with a specific make and model, and being able to take those earlier on before I continue to increase the number of units that I bring on board, that's a gold mine.
So here at ACT, the show is full of diverse vehicles of all kinds. There's heavy construction, there's buses, there's trucks, there's trailers. What are tractors, trailers? What are some of the things that you see as interesting here at the show, and what are you focusing on and looking at today?
Well, for me, it's getting back to automation. All right. So a lot of companies are leaning into automation, putting that data to use. And then I'm taking automation a little bit further with autonomous vehicles, whether it's over the road or on property shifting, especially in our Class 8 space. And so here at ACT, you do see a lot of the autonomous vehicle vendors here who are partnering up with some OEM suppliers here. And I'm looking forward to seeing those on the road and growing in numbers.
So when you think about autonomous, do you look at that as last mile autonomous? Do you see it as primarily highway? How do you see the industry adopting this?
Well, I think the industry is going to adopt, first of all, at the distribution centers or the hubs. So on property shifting is what I'm referring to there. So moving the trailers around from a staging area to the dock door, pulling off the dock door, outbound, and so on and so forth. And then over the road. So basically your long hauls, those that are going multiple states, exceeding the ELD hours of service rules. Going coast to coast, right? A lot of times we'll put trailers on trains, and we'll train them, over the rail, which is not always reliable and timely. But if we can pull those off the road and put them in autonomous trucking and run for 32 hours without refueling, that'll be a great day.
I see. So it's really kind of a mixture from the distribution center, which maybe people don't think of as an important area. There's lots of personnel intensive work to move things around there.
Oh, on the property, yes.
Yeah. And that because it's a enclosed space, it gives you opportunities to do things differently than you could do on roads.
Yeah, it's much more controlled. I don't have to worry about public perception, right? I can really manage how the DR behaves and operates. And to be quite honest with you, that's a tough job. If you've never ridden in a terminal tractor or a shifter and you're slamming into the back of that trailer loading that thing up, it's physically demanding.
To do it all day long, moving
all day
one
long,
after
yeah.
the other.
And it's not exactly a sought after job, right? People would rather be on the road, yes, local. And when you talk about over the road, a lot of our drivers, they don't want to be gone for 4 or 5 days away from their family. So that's just another great application that can really help the livelihood of our drivers today.
So really looking for solving the right problems using different technologies, because those may be different. Distribution center can avail itself of high resolution knowledge of the center, perhaps additional beacons and so on, versus over the road has different issues, needs to have a broader highway map system and so on like that.
Well, AI is certainly accelerating that, and it's basically physics-based AI. Physics AI is what's really doubling down and accelerating the growth of autonomous and automated operations.
Well, it's an exciting future to think about all of those things working together. I think the fleet management job is a hard job. You've seen that firsthand.
Absolutely.
But I think if you do it right, it can create incredible results from the industry.
And bottom line, you need to lean into technology. It's there, it works, and if your company doesn't lean into it, you're going to be missing out on a lot of opportunity. And there's going to be other companies who are going to surface and could potentially just simply run past you.
Well, Lawrence, we've had a wide-ranging discussion, and your experience in the industry is so valuable. I appreciate you coming by and spending time with us.
My pleasure. Certainly enjoyed it, John.
If you like what you're seeing in this episode, please like and subscribe to see more like it, both here from ACT Expo and our other shows all around the world. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon.